Okay, hello everyone. So we are done with the chapter 2. Now we will be moving forward to the chapter 3 in where our topic will run or will be about the market integration. Okay, so the social institution that has one of the biggest impacts on society is the economy. Of course, we will agree with that one. Now, you might think of the economy in terms of number, like the number of unemployed people, the gross domestic product or the GDP of the certain country, or whatever the stock materials is doing today. Well, we often talk about into numerical terms. The economy is composed of people, right? Without people, no, we cannot call that certain economy is a progressive one. Now, that people are the one who organizes all production, consumption, and trade of goods in the society. Now, there are many ways in which products can be made, exchanged, and used. Now, we can think about the capitalism, the socialism, that are those are the major approaches in the certain economy. Now, later on, we will be discussing as to what are the differences of those two terms, capitalism and the socialism. Okay, so economic systems vary from one society to another. Now, there are three. We have the first is the primary sector, which extracts raw materials from natural environments. Then the secondary sector gains the raw materials and transform them into manufactured goods. And the tertiary sector involves services rather than the goods. So in the primary sector, everyone, those people are workers like farmers or miners fit well in the primary sector. So farmers na bilong sila din ha tungod kay ang ilang ginabuhat kanang mga like for example humay. So mao lang na sila may primary sector because sila may nag-extracts atong raw materials from the natural environment. So pwede po din ha ang pangingisda. Okay, so the secondary sector, we have it here, gains the raw materials and transforms them into manufactured goods. So this means, for example, that someone from the primary sector extracts oil from the earth, then someone from the secondary sector refines the petroleum to gasoline. So can you see the point there, class? So in the primary sector, ang atuang gikuan na ay mga tao nga nag-extracts, for example, og oil from the sea, di ba, kana sa dagat. And then dira sa secondary sector, ang gibuhat ana ng mga tao is ilahan na sa term ana ha. We called it that they're going to refine, ilahang i-refine ang kana na oil into petroleum like the gasoline. Okay? So, in the tertiary sector involves services rather than the goods. So, kining primary and secondary, they are more focused on the goods, but in the tertiary they will just offer services only. Okay, so let's move forward now to the international financial institutions. So, world economies have been brought closer together by the globalization. You know that already that globalization really gives a lot of good benefits to us, diba? Now, it is reflected in the praise that when the American economy sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. So, if we're going to understand rather, kumiyuntag manghatsing daw ang economy, which is a great country, automatically daw that the neighbor countries will receive a cold. So, kung naay biyaya na gihatsing ang kana na American country, the karatig lugar or the karatig country will receive also good benefits about it. So kung bad po ang nahitabo or bad ang iyang gikuan, bad po at the same time ang ma-receive sa neighbor countries. Okay, but it is important to remember that it is not only the economy of the United States but also other economies in the world that have a significant impact on the global market and finance. Of course, we need to consider this one that not only the American country but also the others. For example, is the Russia and the Asia. In their financial crisis experienced by those countries, in the world economy, the strength of a more powerful economy brings greater effect on other economies. So it is very clear that if that more powerful economy like the America, it will really gives greater effect also on the other economies, while in the same manner also crisis on the weaker economies have less effect on other economies or less effect on other countries. For example, if here in the Philippines we suffered or we have that so-called scarcity, no? Magkalisod man ta diri sa Pilipinas, still dili maapektuhan ang uban ng mga countries ana because we we are pretty sure that we belong to that weaker countries also, no? So another example is the Argentina's serious financial crisis in the late 1990s and early 2000s had a comparatively small impact on the global economy. Small lang gid ang iyahang effect or impact ana sa global market. Okay, so now we have it here, the Bretton Woods system. So, the major economies in the world had suffered because of the World War I, the Great Depression in the 1930s, and the World War II. Now, because of the fear of the recurrence of lack of cooperation among nation states, political instability, and economic turmoil, especially after the Second World War, reduction of barriers to trade and free flow of money among nations became the focus to restructure the world economy and ensure global financial stability. So that was according to Reitzer in the year 2015. Now, this consists the background for the establishment of the Bretton Woods system. So let's go back to the time in where the world is facing that World War I and the World War II. So since grabe man na siya ng mga panghitabo, it will naagin na siya negative effect also sa economies sa mga countries in the world, of course. Now, nabuo ang Bretton Woods system para magkahiusa tang tanan. Magkahiusa ang katong mga naapektuhan pag-ayo sa World Wars both 1 and 2. Okay? Now, there are 5 key elements that you need to consider in the Bretton Woods system. First is the expression of currency in terms of gold or gold value to establish a par value. Second, the official monetary authority in each country, a central bank or its equivalent, would agree to exchange its own currency for those of other countries at the established exchange rates plus or minus 1% margin. And number 3, the establishment of an overseer for these exchange rates, thus the International Monetary Fund was founded. Number 4, eliminating restrictions on other countries of member states in the international trade. And number 5, US dollar became the global currency. So US dollar gud no ang gigamit diri. Again I would like to put emphasis on the Bretton Woods system that it was created due to their goal, which is to unite the nations. Now, ang kanang Bretton Woods system, wala na yung mga barriers when it comes to trade. No. Mayun tag no barriers, meaning to say, there is a free flow of money among nations. Okay. So, I think that would be all for the Bretton Woods system. So, let us move forward to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade or the GATT and the World Trade Organization. Now, according to Pete, global trade and finance was greatly affected by the Bretton Woods system. Okay? One of the systems born out of the Bretton Woods was the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade and the GATT. Okay? Therefore, nauna ang Bretton Woods system, then after sa Bretton Woods system, na po'y nabuo ng mga organizations and that we have it, the GATT. Muna ni sunod, GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Okay. Now, the GATT class was established in the year 1947. GATT was a forum for the meeting of representatives from 23 member countries. Now, it focused on trade goods through multi-national trade agreements conducted in many rounds of negotiations. Okay, so It was out of the Uruguay round 1986 to 1993 that an agreement was reached to create the World Trade Organization. So after the GATT, here comes dayon nga nabuo ang World Trade Organization. Now, the World Trade Organization, okay, later. We have it here. Who are those countries or 23 founding members of the GATT or the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade? So, again, the specific date and where GATT entered into force or was published or started was on January 1, 1948. Now, the 23 founding members, we have the Australia, the Belgium, Brazil, Burma, Canada, Ceylon, Chile, China, France, India, Lebanon, Luxembourg, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Pakistan, Southern Rhodesia, Syria, South Africa, United Kingdom, United States, Cuba, and Czechoslovakia. Okay, so now let's move forward to the World Trade Organization. Okay, we have it here. The World Trade headquarters is located at Geneva, Switzerland, with 152 member states as of 2008. So, I am not sure kung 152 pa ba gihapon karon, but I think nadungagan ni siya. So, do a research about it na lang kung unsa to na mga countries ang nadugang aning World Trade Organization. Now, unlike the GATT, World Trade Organization is an independent multilateral organization that became responsible for trade in services, non-tariff related barriers to trade, and other broader areas of trade liberalization. So, World Trade Organization man siya, we are focusing to the export and import. Okay? Export and import of products on a certain country to the different countries. Now, an example cited by Reitzer was that differences between nations in relation to regulations on items as manufactured goods or food. A given nation can be taken to task for such regulations if they are deemed to be unfair, restraint on trade in such items. So nabuo ang World Trade Organization class is para let's say uniform ang mga presyo nato when it comes to trade. Kaya, ani magid ni, what if here in the country, Philippines, barato kaayo ang bigas, and then on the other countries, mahal ang bigas. So, unfair kaayo siya. Dapat, it was regulated, or the World Trade Organizations are responsible to create regulations that we need to follow when it comes to exporting and importing products. Now, the general idea where the World Trade Organization is based on what we call the neoliberalism rather. Okay, again, neoliberalism. So what is neoliberalism? This means that by reducing or eliminating barriers, all nations will benefit. Diba? Same lang gud gihapon na siya sa Bretton Woods system nga ang ilahang goal is to unite all the countries by removing the barriers of trade. So free flow lang of money ang ilahang focus ani niya. And there is a World Trade Organization, free flow of trade of products, trading of products rather. Okay, so let's continue. Now, there are, however, significant criticisms to the World Trade Organization, and we cannot deny the fact nga naa yung mga kakulian when it comes to org, di ba? Na yung mga lapses puluana. Now, one that is the trade barriers created by developed countries cannot be countered enough by the World Trade Organization, especially in the agriculture. Now, a concrete case was that the emerging markets in the global south made the majority in the World Trade Organization, but they suffered under the industrial nations which supported the agriculture with subsidies. Okay, so I think that would be all for the World Trade Organization. So now, let us move forward to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So what is IMF? IMF and the World Bank were founded after the World War II. Their establishment was mainly because of peace advocacy after the war. So, ilahang focus po ani is peace advocacy. These institutions aim to help the economic stability of the world. Both of them are basically banks, but instead of being started by individuals like the regular banks, they were started by countries. But of course, the richest countries were those who handled most of the financing and ultimately those who had the greatest influence. Now, I have this scenario I will give you. If ever ang usa ka country magkalisod and then manginahanglan sila og dako kaayo na kwarta, what they just need to do is to run into that World Bank and then borrow money from it, no? So an example of that is our country. We the Philippines, we are pretty sure kung nakabantay mo dako putag kaayog utang sa World Bank, no? Especially atong mga panghitabo nga nahitabo, of course, diri as a Philippines. We have it here, the Build program. I know that aside from the money from the taxes or aside from the money of the people, our president also gabaro pud na siya og kining what we called money in the World Bank para pud i-sustain sa mga panginahanglanon diri sa ato ang ato ang country when it comes to, rebuilding infrastructures, buildings, bridges, and anything that were for public use or for public nga mga kuan, mga butang. Okay, so both of them are basically banks. So, muna to kong gingon ganina, but instead of started by regular bank, ang nag-bleed niya is ang mga countries. And then, of course, kung isa tong mga pinaka sikat or dato when it comes to economy, maugid po'y nanguna sa pag-finance dira sa International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Number one na gid ana class is the America. Okay, IMF and the World Bank were designed to complement each other. The IMF's main goal was to help countries which were in trouble at that time and who could not obtain money by any means. Perhaps their economy collapsed or their currency was threatened. IMF in this case served as a lender or a last resort for countries which needed financial assistance. For instance, an example here, Yemen loaned $93 million from IMF on April 5, 2012 to address its struggle with terrorism. Okay, we have it here, the Yemen. Now, the World Bank in comparison had a more long-term approach. Its main goals revolve around the eradication of poverty, and it funded specific projects that helped them reach their goals, especially in poor countries. Okay, so ang IMF ga-focus siya when it comes to kanang kung nagkalisod ang usa ka country, magpahulam siya og money, pero ang kining World Bank similar lang gyapon siya, kaso ang World Bank he or she the organization rather is more focused on the eradication of poverty, and that ga-supply sila, gahatag sila og mga activities or programs that would fund specific projects that help them reach their goals, especially in the poor countries. So an example of such is their investment in education since 1962 in developing nations like the Bangladesh, Chad, and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the reputation of this institution has been dwindling, mainly due to practices such as lending the corrupt governments or even dictators and imposing ineffective austerity measures to get their money bank. So, naagid gihapon tay matawag na mga lapses, no, or mga kakulian. Okay? So, let us move forward now to we have it here, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or the OPEC, and the European Union. The most encompassing club of the richest countries in the world is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, with 35 member states as of 2016, with Latvia as its latest member. It is highly influential despite the group having little formal power. This emanates from the member countries' resources and economic power. In 1960, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or the OPEC, was originally comprised of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, and Venezuela. They are still part of the major exporters of oil in the world today. OPEC was formed because member countries wanted to increase the price of oil, which in the past had a relatively low price and had failed in keeping up with inflation. Today, the United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Libya, Qatar, Nigeria, and Indonesia are also included as the members. So, kini bitong sa OPEC, those were the countries nga naga-export og mga petroleum or mga gasoline. Kita diri sa Pilipinas, wala ta. We are not the one who produce, but we are the one who export. Okay? Ga-export lang ta ato ng mga petroleum any of the following countries. So that is why, class, if makabantay mo, that whenever that the gasoline is taas ang presyo, maapektuhan gid pod ang presyo sa mga basic na commodities diri sa atua. So ingon ana na siya. Now, we cannot we cannot eradicate that one. Dili ta ingon na makasulbad dayon ta sa problema nganong taas ang presyo sa gasolina tungod kay wala man tay mabuhat kung taas ang presyo pod ana sa ubang country nga ato ang giangkatan og gasoline. So, that's the logic there. Okay? So, we will continue. Now, the European Union, or the EU, is made up of 28 member states. Most members in the Eurozone adopted the euro as basic currency, but some Western European nations like the Great Britain, Sweden, and Denmark did not. Okay? So now, who or what are those, not what, but who are those countries members in the OPEC and OECD? So we have it here in the OECD countries: United States, Mexico, Japan, Turkey, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Italy, South Korea, Slovenia, Latvia, Estonia, Luxembourg, Iceland, Spain, Canada, Poland, Australia, Chile, Netherlands, Belgium, Czech Republic, Greece, Portugal, Sweden, Hungary, Austria, Israel, Switzerland, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Slovakia, Ireland, New Zealand, and Lithuania. Okay, so what are those countries who are those countries rather ang members sa OPEC? We have it here: Algeria, Angola, Congo, Ecuador, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. Okay, so next we have is the European countries. So, who are those countries? Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Republic of Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Netherlands, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. Okay, so next is we have the North American Free Trade, or the NAFTA. Now, the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, is a trade pact between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, created on January 1, 1994, when Mexico joined the two other nations. It was first created, class, in the year 1989, with only Canada and US as trading partners. So sa una, 1989, Canada ug US pa ang nagpartner, but in the year 1994, niapil na pod ang Mexico. Okay? So, NAFTA helps in developing and expanding world trade by broadening international cooperation. It also aims to increase cooperation for improving working conditions in North America by reducing barriers to trade as it expands the markets rather of the three countries. So they are more focused no on the North America. Now, the creation class of NAFTA has caused manufacturing jobs from developed nations. We have the Canada or the United States to transfer to less developed nations or Mexico in order to reduce the cost of their products. In Mexico, producer prices dropped and some 2 million farmers were forced to leave their farms. During this time, consumer food prices rose, causing 2 million Mexicans, about 25% of their population, to live in food poverty. So, I think that would be all for the North America. No, we cannot expand further that one because they were more focused on the North America, the Canada, and the Mexican countries lang naman. But siguro, the good effect for this one is nakatabang ni North American free trade tungod kay daghan may nga buo ng mga businesses diraan na country. So galuk sila for a manpower, mga trabahante. So daghan kayo og mga natagaan og opportunity to have this kind of jobs which is way also nga na-eradicate nila ang poverty of those mga countries. Okay, so let us move forward now to the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. So, the first big economic change was the agricultural revolution. When people when people learn how to domesticate plants and animals, they realized that it was much more productive than hunter-gatherer society. So, dati-rati pa man gyud, di ba? Um, nagakuha ta og income or our source of food is through really the agricultural lang gyud kanang natural na mga plants, natural na mga vegetables or unsa ba din haa. But nowadays no, because of the what we called high technology, daghan na kayog nabuo na mga daghan na kay nabuo na mga businesses. So that's what we call the industrial revolution, in where the rise of the industries or firms came new economic tools like steam engines, manufacturing, and mass production. So these things happen also with the help of the technology. Okay? Factories in that industrial revolution pop up and change how work function. Instead of working at home where people work for their family by making things from start to finish, they began working as wage laborers and then becoming more specialized in their skills. Overall, productivity went up, standards of living rose, and people had access to a wider variety of goods due to mass production. Okay, so see the differences. Agricultural, good, but it becomes better yun when it comes to industrial revolution. Okay, so now let us move forward to the two terms. We have the capitalism and the socialism. Let's start first with the capitalism. It is a system in which all natural resources. Okay, wait. There were two competing economic models that sprang up around the time of the Industrial Revolution. So what are those two? We have it here, capitalism and the socialism. As economic capital became more and more important to the production of goods, these were capitalism and the socialism. Capitalism, it is a system in which all natural resources and means of production are privately owned. Okay, as economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. And it emphasizes profit maximization and competition as the main drivers of efficiency. It emphasizes mono to siya. This means that when one owns a business, he needs to outperform his competitors if he is going to succeed. He is incentivized to be more efficient by improving the quality of one's product and reducing its prices. So this is what economist Adam Smith in 1970s called the invisible hand of the market. The idea is that if one leaves a capitalist economy alone, consumers will regulate things themselves by selecting goods and services that provide the best value. So, in there is a capitalism class, ato lang yung dumdumon na tanan ng mga natural resources, tanan ng mga natural resources are owned by privately owned. May tawag privately owned na alay usa ka tao or organization, grupo ba, private nga organization ang nag-own ana. Dili countries ang ga-own. Now, ang kalahian niya sa socialism is that in the socialism, it is a political, social, and economic philosophy encompassing a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership of the means of production and democratic control such as workers, self-management of enterprises. Okay? Government plays an even larger role in socialism. The means of production are under collective ownership and that property is owned by the government and allocated to all citizens, not only to those with the money to afford it. So, ingon ana ang sa socialism. Okay, so let's move forward now. We have it here. Karl Marx. Dirian na siya sa socialism. Ay, wait. You have to remember Adam Smith in the Capitalism and you have to remember also socialism. I know you have to remember Karl Marx in the Socialism, in where there is a famous quote from this person: democracy is the road to socialism. A very powerful line, no? Okay, so let's move forward now. We have it here, the information revolution. Okay, I'm sorry for the spelling. This one, incorrect spelling. The information revolution, our time today, ato ang panahon karon, is what we call information revolution, in where ang technology, it reduced the role of human labor and shifted it from a manufacturing-based economy to one that is based on service work and the production of ideas rather than the goods. Mao na natin gitawag na in our time today, there are automatically, or there are so many gadgets or technologies being invented, and that it helps our life easier. In a case that instead dati kita mismo ang, like for example, making a shoe. Sa una, ang mga tao, they are really the ones who are going to make tahi-tahi sa sapatos. But today, there are machines na ilahang gamiton nga automatic na lang. Kibali ang tao, igo na lamang siya, nag-facilitate. So, see the difference? This has a lot of residual effects on our economy. Computers and other technologies are beginning to replace many jobs because of automation or outsourcing jobs offshore. Maupod lagi ni siya ang negative, let's say, result of this information revolution, kay daghan ang makuhaan og trabaho tungod kay there are some companies or factories that they do not hire human being or mga tao to perform that job or to have that product. Instead, wala na, kaya na naman sila yung mga robots, or we have it mga automated na bitaw class na mga machines. Okay, so I hope you see my point there. So that would be all for the information revolution. So now we will move forward to the global corporation. So the increase in international trade has both created and been supported by international regulatory groups like the World Trade Organization and transitional trade agreements like NAFTA. There is not a single country that is completely independent. All are dependent to some degree on international trade for their own prosperity. Without international trade class, there will be no need for international regulatory groups. Without the international regulatory groups, international trade at the current massive scale would be impractical. Okay, so last we have it here, the international trade agreements. So,
In the international trade agreements, often benefit private industries the most, and the companies can produce their goods and services across many different countries. So, mo ni siya ang agreement nila. Of course, it will benefit kasagaran ang mga makabenepisyo yun is katong mga private industries, but the good thing nga na is companies from different countries are able to export or import their goods and services across different countries.
So we have last multinational or transnational corporations or MNCs and TNCs. They are also referred to as global corporations. They intentionally surpass the national borders and take advantage of opportunities in different countries to manufacture, distribute, market, and sell their products. Okay, so that will be all for the chapter 3 topics. So I hope that you learned something out from this video.